With the third pick in the 2017 NBA Draft, the Boston Celtics select Jayson Tatum.
Drives down and throws it down! Wow!
You guys will have me back. I plan on re-signing here next year.
Ahead of the field and lays it in.
Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are both headed to Brooklyn to join the Nets. So
Harden kicks it back out. Jeff Green for three. It's good.
When you look at this Celtic team right now, I think the word is broken.
Tatum fires away. Pumps it in. Steph Curry from way downtown.
Jensen just a little bit late, rotating over.
Fires up the three. Bang! Bang! That's it. It's over. The Celtics are heading back to the NBA Finals.
5 conference finals in 7 years. Jayson Tatum is a legitimate superstar and the Celtics are going back to the NBA Finals. Boston is continuing their storied history with Tatum and will have a good chance to win their first championship in the JT Celtics era. But how did they get here and where did it all start? Despite making the Eastern Conference Finals in the previous season, the Celtics came into the 2018 season with a nearly completely new starting lineup. In that previous year, 5'9" MVP candidate Isaiah Thomas had the best season of his career, leaving his body on the line to will Boston to the conference finals. But in the offseason, IT, Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk, and Amir Johnson would all leave, whether it was through free agency or trades. But somehow this team would get even more talented. Boston would trade for Kyrie Irving, champion just a year prior, and wanted his own team to be the first option after being the second behind LeBron for years. Gordon Hayward would also be a notable offseason signing, though his very early exit would make him a non-factor for the season, forcing other players to step up into roles that they didn't think they would have a trend throughout the year, and one of those players was Jayson Tatum. Boston miraculously got the 3rd pick after trading their first overall selection, in which they got from the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce Nets trade a while ago, and would select Jayson Tatum instead of taking the unanimous first pick Markelle Fultz, who they would have got if they didn't trade the first pick, which turned out to be a franchise-changing move. And despite that Hayward injury, the Celtics were on fire to start the season, including a 16-game win streak, and Kyrie was great, really everything that Boston could want. The young guys in Tatum and Brown were playing well, and the bench gave this team grit that only title-caliber squads have. But it all fell apart in early March, or at least it should have.
The Celtics, Irving's doctors, Irving, have decided here that his season is over.
Kyrie Irving would go down with a knee injury that he had a month earlier and would not return. Yet another crushing blow to the Celtics' playoff hopes as their 2 All-Stars were out. Boston kept on competing. They won 6 straight and finished with 55 wins, good for second in a tough Eastern Conference. And throughout the playoffs, a bunch of the C's made a name for themselves. Terry Rozier went nuclear in the first round with Boston defeating Milwaukee in 7, and that carried on to the second round with a win against the 76ers. Consistently throughout the series, guys stepped up. In Game 1, Rozier and Tatum both nearly scored 30, while Jaylen Brown and Tatum led Boston in a 22-point comeback to secure home court. Al Horford knocked down some big clutch shots in Game 3 despite the confetti coming down early for Philly, and in Game 5, Marcus Smart would make a clutch defensive steal to avenge his free throw miscues, and that would close the series out. Boston would face off against Cleveland for the 2nd consecutive year, but of course this time was completely different as Boston would have an entirely different core, and everything would go right at first. Boston got out to a huge lead early in Game 1, and it was never in doubt, with Brown and Morris both having huge games and were able to take Game 2 despite LeBron's historic night and went up 2-0. Unfortunately, that's as far as they would get. Despite Tatum and Rozier's efforts, including one of the best plays of JT's career to this day, at least considering the circumstances, LeBron and the Cavs would prevail, defeating Boston in 7, but what an inspiring playoffs this was. Boston was missing both of their all-star caliber players, and Tatum was just a rookie, yet they made the conference finals and almost took out LeBron, who was at the end of a league-breaking 8 consecutive finals stretch. The excitement for next season was through the roof, and with LeBron leaving to the West and Kyrie announcing to the Boston faithful that he would be returning next season, what could go wrong? Well, it turned out to be everything. With the young guys like Tatum, Brown, Rozier, and Smart, who stepped up last season and forced LeBron-led team to 7 in the conference finals, of course they demanded more touches. But the veterans like Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward thought they deserved the touches as the former All-Stars. The expectation was a title, or at worst a finals appearance. Yet they finished with just 49 wins. Jayson Tatum seemingly took a step back, which had many question his actual potential, and a team with some of the worst chemistry on both sides of the ball that oftentimes just relied on good shot making from pure talent talent. Kyrie Irving and the media consistently put doubt into fans' minds about his promise to them, and Smart never looked fully healthy after his oblique injury. Boston could just never put it together and would be eliminated in the second round in just 5, even after Paul Pierce's guarantee of a Celtics series win, marking the end of one of the most disappointing seasons in franchise history. The Kyrie era was officially over. In the offseason, he would go back on his promise and join Kevin Durant in not New York but Brooklyn, and some key players over the last few years, Al Horford, Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris, and Aaron Baines, would depart over the summer, and Boston put their faith into the youth movement of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, showing the value of that Kevin Garnett-Paul Pierce trade from 2013. Boston would also acquire Kemba Walker in a sign-and trade and give him a 4-year extension, stealing him away from Charlotte, as this finally gave the all-star point guard a chance to prove himself on a winning team. And this was a very good season for almost anyone but Kemba. He would make the all-star game, but was very inefficient, couldn't replicate some of the same numbers he did with the Hornets. He wasn't the player that some thought he was and consistently got taken advantage of defensively, but the young guy stepped up in a huge way. And by the way, he did make some clutch shots. It wasn't like he was a bum. But Jayson Tatum cemented himself into an exclusive group of future superstars. After a disappointing second campaign, he finished the 2020 season with 23 points and 7 assists while shooting over 40% from deep. He was the Celtics' first option, leading the team in usage rate even over the point guard Kemba. And that got JT his first All-Star appearance, an All-NBA team spot, and finished top 5 in most improved voting, and even snagged an MVP vote, and this was just his 3rd season. Jaylen Brown would also take a notable jump to a 20-point-per-game guy and a key piece for the future. And maybe even more importantly, the team gelled way better. Gordon Hayward was able to regain a bit of his old magic, though did struggle with some injuries. Smart was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and nobody had a really bad year, but maybe somehow even more impressively finished with 48 wins, just one short of last year despite the season being shortened to 72 games. Boston would continue to succeed in the playoffs, beating a shorthanded Philadelphia squad as their big three exploded offensively. The next series would be tougher though, as Toronto was coming off a championship, and though they didn't have Kawhi anymore, this was still a championship tested team with stars like Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam. But in the first couple games, Tatum would will them to victory with some big buckets from Walker in the second game. Toronto would respond, OG knocking down a series-saving buzzer beater to save the Raps from a 3-0 deficit, and Lowry's insane night just a couple days later would tie these series. Boston would comfortably win Game 5 before a memorable Game 6 that nobody has forgot.
Smart throws it into Tice, throws it down, kicks it out to Powell, corner 3, ties Jaylen Brown, throws it ahead to Tatum, Tatum goes up and throws it to Tatum, Tatum off the bounce, stripped by Powell, Powell with one man to beat, drives into Smart,
Sending him to his right, center middle, and get help.
Lowry falling away, got it, Kyle Lowry drilled.
A double overtime classic led by the stars Jayson Tatum and Kyle Lowry had some of their best nights of the season, but the Raptors kept fighting and forced a Game 7, but fortunately for the Celtics, they wouldn't be getting sent out of Orlando just yet. They held on to an early fourth quarter lead to defeat Toronto in their first matchup against each other in over half a decade, but the real story of the series was Boston's resiliency and Jayson Tatum. He would average 24, 10, and 5 across the series, and though it was his lowest scoring series of the postseason, every bucket just seemed so huge in such a close series. They would then go up against Miami, but the last series may have just been too much for the C's. Tatum would average 26.5 and nearly 10 boards, but Miami just seemed like a team of destiny. Jimmy hit big shots consistently, Bam was an all-worldly defender, and Tyler Hero could not miss. The defense of Boston wasn't enough, as Miami scored 106 or more in every single game. Overall, it was still a very successful season for Boston, and despite Gordon Hayward leaving in free agency, with this young core's performance, it looked like they were title bound. But just like over the last few years, the Celtics franchise has been on a roller coaster, and there was a big fall. Boston got cursed from injuries and missing time from protocol. The team lacked consistency, and though there were some magical moments like Jayson Tatum's 60 bomb, the team just could not get anything going. Boston finished in the play-in at just 500, and aside from Tatum and Brown's jump, both of them making all-star appearances, guys like Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier declined. The offense was stagnant and resorted back to the pull-up driven focus that plagued them in the second year of the Kyrie era. They could not close games in the clutch with a 17-26 record, 4th worst win percentage in the league, and had the second most clutch losses. Boston lacked an identity, and this horrible season resulted in a sweep to the Brooklyn Nets in the first round, an embarrassment to the entire organization, losing to Kyrie Irving, and they made some big changes. Long-term executive Danny Ainge would leave, and head coach Brad Stevens would step up, and Udoka would become the coach. And this restructuring would turn out to be an amazing move. Al Horford would return in the offseason as well, but not everything would start great. Boston started the season 18-21 and outside the play-in. January 7th, 2022. That's when everything changed. The team finally got healthy and they were on fire. The Celtics won 13 of their next 17 and at the deadline would get even better, trading for Derek White and Daniel Tice. Boston would keep on moving, going 20-6 to finish the year, a remarkable 33-10 record from January 7th, and despite drawing the Nets for the second consecutive season, this was different. Unlike the Bucks, they won the last game of the season and wanted this matchup, and it worked. One of the best sweeps we have seen recently. Jayson Tatum hitting a buzzer beater in Game 1, close wins in Game 2 and 3, and holding off Kevin Durant's 39 in the closing game. But it would not get any easier. This Boston team had an extremely tough path. They faced off against a banged-up Bucks team, but Giannis was the best player in the world at that time, and that series was back and forth. A Giannis triple-double responded by a Jaylen Brown-led blowout. Giannis's 42-pointer and Al Horford's putback being too late, but that was nullified by a 15-point fourth quarter win by the Celtics mere days later. Then right after that, the Bucks would win the fourth quarter 33-21 and come back from down 14 to give Milwaukee a 3-2 lead, despite Tatum finishing with 30 and 34 in Game 4 and 5. But in Game 6, he would not have to worry about that.
Tatum tries a corner three, got it. Drives right into Grayson Allen. Tatum launches a three, puts it in. Tatum finds some room, launches a three. Jayson Tatum
in Game 5.
Tatum gets to his spot, nails another assist. Fires away another three, got it. Tatum the drive, goes inside. Tatum step back three-pointer, it's good. Tatum catches, Tatum shoots, Tatum scores. Tatum's got to put it up, step back three-pointer, bang! Physical with Tatum. Tatum on the drive, lays it in, and the foul. Tatum tried to slam it, somebody got a piece of it. And Jayson Tatum with a chance for a three-point.
Giannis would end up with 44 and 20 in the middle of a historic season, but Tatum scored 46 with 7 threes, while Smart and Brown would also end up scoring over 20 points, forcing a Game 7 where there would be an unexpected hero. Grant Williams shot 18 threes, converting 7 of them, while Boston made 22 total, and on the other side, the Bucks couldn't shoot, going 4 for 33 and an abysmal 12% from deep, and that led to a blowout. Boston would play Miami in the conference finals for the second time in 3 seasons, but it's really a continuation of a rivalry that has gone on since the Kevin Garnett and LeBron James years, and this was another Tatum classic. But Miami, who was hot early, they took 2 of the first 3, forcing Boston in an uncomfortable situation, but this team was built for this. A couple of big stretches in Game 4 and 5 would give the Celtics a series lead before Jimmy's heroics. A 47-pointer in Game 6 before a Game 7 classic between the two teams. Marcus Smart's offensive jump was exemplified in this game. He won Defensive Player of the Year this season. We knew how good he was on that side, but after years of offensive inconsistency, he was a star in the fourth, and Boston got lucky with a Jimmy miss in the closing seconds as they advanced to the finals. But there was a problem. Jayson Tatum had been elite in this playoffs, averaging 27, 7, and 6, but the injury he had suffered in Game 3 of the conference finals was clearly affecting him in the finals. And that injury would just be too much for Boston. They would get out to a 2-1 lead, and Robert Williams was marking himself as one of the better centers in the league, but Curry would go nuclear. And with Tatum's injury, Boston just didn't have a good enough one to win the title. Unfairly, the choker label got put on Tatum and Boston after this, but it truly is one of the bigger what-ifs in recent times, as Boston couldn't match Curry's star power with an injured Tatum, but had he been healthy, could have been a different series. But it was still a finals appearance just 1 year after a huge disappointment, and though Udoka would have off-court issues that led to Mazzulla replacing him as the coach, this was a very encouraging step for this team's future. The Celtics would receive Malcolm Brogdon over the summer, but the real story in the guard position for this team was Derek White's emergence. He was a jack of all trades, becoming a main playmaker for this team, and was one of the best role players in the league, and the stars got rewarded heavy, with Jaylen Brown making his first appearance on an All-NBA team, and Jayson Tatum finishing top 5 in MVP voting and getting his second consecutive first-team All-NBA. Boston would finish with 57 wins as an all-around great team, but this playoffs made them very untrustworthy. Atlanta took the Celtics to 6, a series that should have lasted at most 5 games, as Trae Young's game winner put fear into Celtics fans' heart, even if it wasn't just for this series. Boston would then face off against a Sixers team that was missing Embiid at first, and even when he returned, he wasn't fully healthy. Again, the Celtics made it harder than it should have been. Harden scores 45 in a game that had a near 90% win probability for Boston was gone, and so was their home court advantage. They would dominate Embiid in his return in Game 2 before solidly winning Game 3, but again, Boston would disappoint. Philly would also take Game 5 in Boston, and the Celtics faced a 3-2 deficit. This was up to Jayson Tatum to take over.
Little quick sit dribble Tatum. That's 2. This one is really over.
Dark side. Minus Joe.
Tatum with the 3. That one falls. In the fourth quarter. Tatum finds space. Step out of the way. A lot of elite individual defenders. Tatum. Sidestep. Another three. Scored 33 to 2. Tatum fires away.
Big threes in Game 6, but what's even better is a 51-pointer in Game 7 as Boston would play Miami yet again in the conference finals, and what a series that would be. Boston dropped the first two despite Tatum's 30-piece, and a disappointing performance by everyone in Game 3 would leave them in a 3-0 deficit. This was over, right? Well, the Celtics kept on winning, and after a last-second putback by Derek White in Game 6, it was all tied at 3. Well, not anymore. What seems like a dream run by Boston, almost coming down from back 3-0, which had never been done before, was crushed by an 8 seed, and after a 57-win season, they would be heading home disappointed again, without a championship, and it was getting really bad at this point. The Celtics had extended their stars. They had been in the conference finals over and over again, and even made the actual finals, but they just couldn't get the job done. Changes had to be made, and they were. The Celtics would trade long-term guard Marcus Smart, but took advantage of the vulnerable Wizards and desperate Grizzlies to acquire former All-Star Kristaps Porzingis and 2 first-round picks, and would also get Drew Holiday during the fallout of the Lillard deal. This created one of the deepest top sixes we have ever seen, who stayed relatively healthy throughout the regular season, and they had some role players that can step up at times, and they dominated. 64 wins, 4th most in the storied Celtics franchise history, and it really should have been more. In the last month of the season, this team wasn't even really trying, and was just experimenting with different lineups as they knew they had the first seed locked. They averaged the 2nd most points, most threes, 2nd highest 3-point percentage, 2nd most boards, most blocks, least turnovers, best plus minus by a ton, best offensive rating, and 2nd best defensive rating, becoming the first team since the Michael Jordan Bulls to finish top 3 in offensive, defensive, and net rating in multiple consecutive seasons, and in the playoffs this team dominated. Porzingis would get injured, but Horford stepped up, and they would beat a Jimmy Butler-less Heat in 5, banged up Cavaliers in 5, then swept a Pacers squad that missed Hallie at times, and KP returned in the final, as the Celtics are now up 1-0 against the Dallas Mavericks and just 3 wins away from winning an NBA title. JT and JB might actually get the job done. After all the scrutiny towards this Celtics team, and especially Tatum, they are really close to winning their first championship as a core and the first Celtics title in over a decade. Now, if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers soon. We're at 800, and it would mean so much. I've done YouTube for years across different channels, and the fact that we're even this close is just insane. And comment who you think is going to win the series, and if you want to check out more, there's a video on the screen right now about the history of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It doesn't include this year, but the rest of the entire Thunder era is in that video.